Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle Ross. I'm the Senior Director of Sponsorship Relations and Civil Engagement here at TAG. And welcome to the TAG Product Management Society's event called How to Motivate Yourself and Your Team Through Adversities. We're excited about kicking off our first event and excited about what Chad is going to be bringing to you all this afternoon. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to our event sponsors for this event, QTS and Warner Media. Thank you guys so much. Without your support, we know we would not be able to pull events like this off. So we truly appreciate your support for this event. I want to thank also our members, any of you guys who are members out there. Thank you so much for supporting our society and our event today. And if you're not members, please make sure that you check out TAG online and see how we can kind of make you guys become members as well. But again, thank you so much for your support this afternoon. I'd like to turn it over to our TAG Product Management Society Board Chair, Nitin Mahendrakar, and he will kick us off. Nitin?
Thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm really very excited to see you all or have you here today for our invite or the meeting here, virtual one. On behalf of all the society board members, I want to welcome you and also want to welcome Chad here as well. As you know, we have an outstanding and well-known speaker today for our event, and really he's going to cover our topic around how do you motivate during adversity and share some of his life stories as well. Really, before we actually get into that, I wanted to also share with you a little bit about TAG Product Management Society. Most of you probably are already aware of the society, and some of you probably are new to the society as well. So TAG Product Management Society is part of Technology Association of Georgia. The society was really created with a key focus in mind, which is really providing a platform to get the like-minded people, product management professionals on the same platform where we can share knowledge and network with the peers. So that's what we really try to do. If you look around, you'll actually notice that we are roughly around 20,000 professionals, product management professionals in and around Atlanta. So really our goal is to bring all those professionals together on this platform and share and network with each other. As part of the society, we do around 3 to 4 events every year. And those events are focused on either networking events. We also do some events that are best practices. We also do events where we call industry leaders and speakers like Chad and do our events as well. One of our signature events is also an awards program, which we do once every year, where we recognize our peers really who have contributed in a meaningful way in the product management discipline or to their organization. So with that, I want to move to the next slide. Okay. I want to thank our society sponsors. Again, as you know, this is a society that actually runs on sponsorship. So we really want to thank QTS and Turner for supporting us, and due to which we are able to bring all these events to you as well. Now, this is our actually first event this year. As Kyle mentioned, we would be doing more events going forward. Next slide. So as you know, our guest speaker today, Chad Foster, has been gracious and kind enough to join us here to share some of his experience. To give a quick introduction about Chad, he is actually a very, very interesting and genuine person that I know personally. He's actually, just a little bit of information around him. He's the first blind person to graduate from Harvard Business School and the leadership program. In fact, he's also savvy with technology. He developed a software at Oracle, which Oracle said that wouldn't be impossible to be created. As part of that, he has generated countless jobs. He's contributed billions of dollars in the corporate world. And from speaking perspective, he's spoken internationally to various leaders of different organizations that include Bank of America, Google, GE, and Microsoft, to name a few. Uh, he's also an avid snow skier, and he would be surprised that Chad does snow skiing. He does that even after he has lost his eyesight. Chad actually challenges traditional ideas of peak performance and change, and he'll show you how to really take advantage of your disadvantages or blind spots. And his really tough-minded and matter-of-fact attitude has helped him develop something we call as, or he calls as, blind ambition. And there is a book that he's also coming up with, which we'll talk a little bit during our Q&A. So with that, I would like to welcome Chad. Please give a warm welcome to Chad. Chad,
thank you.
It's up to you.
Thank you. So, what an amazing time that we live in. To think that despite my condition, my lack of eyesight, there are tools available that allow me to innovate and participate in the remarkable things that life has to offer. Like being with you all here today. Like I always say, this is a great time to go blind. Not that I'm recruiting, but just 20 or 30 years ago was not a good time to go blind. 20 or 30 years ago was a terrible time to go blind. Trust me, if any of you are looking into going blind, now's the time. But with all of the technology out there, like GPS systems and smartphones, it's incredible what you can accomplish. Now, we live in a very dynamic world and circumstances are constantly changing. So in that sense, all of us are blind in some aspect. My goal is to help you see the world through a slightly different lens and improve your vision. And sometimes the best way to improve your vision is to stop looking at everything and focus on what really matters. So today we're going to talk a little bit about mindset and how it can allow us to adapt and even thrive in the most challenging circumstances. So for those of you who don't know, I was not born blind. Growing up, I could see during the day, and I played sports like football, basketball, soccer, and wrestling, but I lost my eyesight as a teenager due to an eye disease. Has anyone here ever tried to see through a really dense fog? Yeah, my vision started acting kind of like that. I'd always had poor night vision, but now I had poor day vision. By the way, if you have poor night vision and poor day vision, you're blind, just so you know. It's a free diagnosis. No charge for that one. So on one evening, I had more than a few drinks and impaired judgment when I decided it was a good idea to walk a couple of miles down the road for a late night hamburger. During that adventure, I did not land the hamburger that I so desperately craved, but I did land 15 feet inside of a drainage ditch. Another time, I was walking to class on campus and going down flights of stairs when all of a sudden, an entire story of stairs was missing. I stepped off of the stairs and fell 15 feet to the ground again. And while lying there that day, it occurred to me that, I'm an optometrist, but I don't think I could see. People who can see don't step into 15-foot holes on a regular basis. Have any of you felt like you stepped into a deep, dark hole? I learned a valuable lesson that day. You do not know what you cannot see when you cannot see it. You do not know what you cannot see when you cannot see it. Even if you have perfect eyesight, there's something in your life that you are unable to see. Being totally honest with ourselves, everyone here has something in their life that they can improve. So after having countless near-death experiences while walking and driving and flushing over 2 years of university work down the drain, and facing the fact I was in the prime of my life, I was forced to embrace the concept that I would no longer be able to see. Never be able to see a sunset again. Never be able to see my wife. Never see my children. Life, as I had known it, was vanishing like a dream. That vivid memory slowly floated out of my grasp as I woke up to the morning of my dark reality. Sure, I could have spent the rest of my life feeling sorry for myself. But instead, I decided to adopt a new philosophy. And that philosophy is that excuses are for losers. It's hard to hear, isn't it? Excuses are for losers. How many of us spend inordinate amounts of time looking for good and possibly even legitimate reasons to fail? And even if you find a legitimate reason to fail, how does that serve you? There may be a few legitimate reasons to fail. For example, if you're dead, okay, that's pretty legitimate. Or maybe you're beating your competition so badly that you want to give them a chance to catch up. That might be another reason to fail. But who would you rather be? Someone who found good and possibly legitimate reasons to fail, or someone who found a way to break through your barriers? For me, the decision was clear. I decided that excuses are for losers. The reality is I had no choice. I had to embrace my situation. I had to think positively and take action. On the upside, at least I'm not afraid of the dark, right? Then I'd be a blind guy wandering around just screaming. So at this point, not even being able to walk around, I knew I had no choice. So I went to the Seeing Eye to get a guide dog, where I learned far more than just how to use a guide dog. This was the place where I learned the most important lesson of my life. While there, the opportunity to meet lots of courageous people. I met folks with mental impairments who were also blind. I met folks on dialysis because the diabetes that had robbed them of their eyesight was also destroying their kidneys. And I even met these young girls who were deaf and blind. And they, like everyone else there, were getting a service dog to be independent. It's one thing when you meet someone on the street and hear how rough they have it, but it's another thing altogether when you live with someone and you see their challenges firsthand for an entire month. That moment was a real tipping point for me. What's your tipping point? When did you realize all the things that you take for granted? Here I was, 23 years old, had many years of eyesight, all of my hearing and kidney function, and despite some questionable decisions in my youth, all of my cognitive faculties. This epiphany shifted the tectonic plates I'd stood on for so many years. Being exposed to these courageous people taught me life's most valuable lesson. Happiness is not a feeling. Happiness is not an emotion. Happiness is a decision that each of us make every single day when we wake up. We either choose to deliberately frame our perception, or we allow the circumstances of life to determine our happiness for us. This, ladies and gentlemen, is key to improving your happiness and your life vision. Not one of us here, and not one person on the planet controls everything that happens to them. Yet we all have total and complete control over how we respond. We can either choose to respond to the events of life in a purposeful and positive way, or we can simply react without the assistance of thoughtful intentions. I like to think of it like a game of poker. No player controls the hand they're dealt, but every player has complete control over how they play their cards. Now, the single most important lesson people can learn is how to tell themselves the right stories. The fact is, I went blind in my teens. Now, there were two stories I could have told myself. Story number one is I went blind because I have extremely bad luck. Or story number 2, I went blind because I'm one of the very few people on this planet with the strength and the toughness to overcome it and help others. Technically, both stories are correct. Which story do you think I should live by? I went blind because I could suck it up and take it while helping others, but you don't have to go blind to use this tool. Anyone can make the decision to tell themselves a better story. You get to decide your story. The facts are far less relevant than the stories that we tell ourselves. The biggest influence in your life is you. And if both your stories are true, why not tell yourself the best one? Because in the end, we all become our stories. Dealing with change is hard, though. Believe me, I get it. After I went blind, I discovered that computers unlocked a whole new world. There was a problem. Not every software application works seamlessly with the technology that I need to use. So I taught myself how to write code to engineer my software so that it would integrate with other applications. Learning how to do that was not easy, but it would have been impossible without first having the right mindset. The mindset to grow, the mindset to adapt to change. If I can learn how to write code without eyesight, I think people should be able to figure out how to turn on the new laptops. And it's less about our ability and more about our willingness to try and our determination to follow through. So I engineered this technology for myself as well as others, both personally and professionally. And as a result, the code that I wrote is still being used by thousands of blind people for various software systems. What's your standard for you? Are you a leader or are you a follower? One time, a former colleague from Accenture gave me a call and told me they had a customer with a blind employee who was unable to do his job because of a problem between the customer relationship management software and the screen reading software for the blind. I built a software solution that allowed these two programs to talk to one another so that this guy could do his job. Oracle said it cannot be done, but I'd already done it. What's your standard for you? Innovative leadership is not doing what other people think you should do. It's doing what you know you can achieve and leading others to do the same. I'm all in. I remember one time I went to a professional football game and had way too much to drink. And after the game, I thought it would be fun to ride a mechanical bull. Rather ambitious. To be honest with you, I could not even tell when the bull began to spin because I was already spinning by the time I got on the bull. I ended up crashing through a table and beer went everywhere. And that's when I learned that being blind drunk and being a drunk blind guy are not at all the same thing. I also enjoy downhill snow skiing. And there are a lot of people who are absolutely terrified when they look downhill from 13,000 feet, but it doesn't faze me. I just don't see what the big deal is all about. And believe it or not, I like to do a little yard work. I like to mow the lawn and do a little trimming. And I like yard work a lot because I'm ambitious, but it clearly makes my neighbors uncomfortable. Ambition is important, but you have to tell yourself the right stories while taking advantage of your disadvantages. But if you're willing to accept less than your definition of success, then these are worthless. In order to achieve our goals, we must refuse to be denied. Are you willing to accept less than your goal? If you are, then you should expect failure. Those who are successful in life refuse to be denied. They demand greatness from themselves and from those around them. I refuse to live my life according to other people's expectations of what they think I can do. I refuse to live my life in fear. I refuse to let my lack of eyesight limit my vision. You may call it blind ambition, but I call it life. Thank you. I'm Chad Foster.
Thanks, Chad. And we'll do a quick video here.
Sure. I'm gonna get a cup of water. Step out of the
Yep.
frame for a second.
Thanks, Rebecca, for playing that video. So you just saw Chad there skiing down the slope, which is pretty amazing if you think uh, the disadvantages has. And I still don't do skiing, and I'm scared of it. So I have something to learn here today from Chad as well. So, Chad, thank you again for your insight on some life lessons. I think key points I kind of took away here was, how do you look at every situation and really take advantages of the disadvantages, right? Which is very, I'm going to write it down and keep it up on my desk here. The other thing is that you mentioned, happiness is a decision you make really every day, which is very important for folks to remember, because sometimes we kind of blame situation and we say, well, I'm sad because of this, but really it depends on how you look at situation, and that's a decision you make. So thanks for giving those key insights. I think I want to switch here a little bit on asking you some questions, and I'm sure our audience would also be interested in some of these questions.
Sure.
Just to let you all know, we do have a Slido link that we have shared on the chat with an event code. So from audience, if you have any questions for Chad, feel free to enter that using the link. We do have some couple of questions up there. If you like those, you can press the like button, or if you have question of your own, you can enter those. So Chad, question for you, and I have few of those. We'll probably talk and it would be more casual interaction.
Sure.
At every, or maybe at some point or other in life, everyone goes through an experience, right? That can be that kind of be a life-changing, or the trajectory of the life changes as a result of that event, right?
Yep.
And either this experience could be positive experience, or it could be a negative experience as well. So you just mentioned that you took your experience of going blind and the adversities in life that you had, and you really turned it into something that you could help others. So what was the driving factor for you here? Like when you say that you wanted to help others, when did you realize, or how did you realize that, I can take my disadvantage to really help others to learn, motivate, or grow in their life?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'd always had people tell me that I was inspiring, which always, I wasn't sure how to receive it, to be honest with you, because I never saw myself as an inspiring person. But then when I was actually attending Harvard and learning from Bill George up there, who's the author, professor, former Medtronic CEO, and wrote the book Discover Your True North, I had one of those moments where I realized that by taking my, the struggle that I've faced in going blind, and what I've been able to do professionally, and repackaging that in a more purposeful and intentional way, I could help a lot of people. And after I started doing that, I realized that the sense of fulfillment and enjoyment, it's kind of hard to put into words, but it almost makes going blind worth it, if that makes sense, which really didn't make sense to me at first. So it probably takes a little bit to resonate with everyone else. But when you can take your life's biggest traumas, and this is a big part of what he teaches, but you take your life's traumas and figure out a way to connect that to your purpose, your passion, and your profession, it really can lead you to a very fulfilling sort of mission of where you can give back. And so that, for me, that was the point. You know, I'd always pushed along to make it professionally, but at that moment in that class, I realized that there was something greater out there where I could help in a more meaningful way. And it actually, it's one of the things that it helps me to help others. It actually makes me feel better.
Well, that's great. I think that brings up my other question I had on my list is really around happiness. So as you mentioned, I think there are adversities in life that you can use to your advantages, but there could be audience today here that may have not faced any adversities, right? So do you think one must face adversities to really realize what happiness means?
I wouldn't conflate happiness and adversity, but I do think I have a life belief system, a philosophy of growth through adversity. So I do believe if you're never facing growth, you're never facing adversity, then you're not really growing. So I do believe that that is where growth takes place. I think happiness is a little more nuanced. To me, happiness is not, it's not the feeling and it's not the emotion. It's a combination of things. I do think adversity can give you fulfillment, and fulfillment can lead into happiness. But I do think happiness to me is all about perspective and choosing to see things in a certain way. So we're very fortunate, you know, human beings, in that we can have consciousness and we can think about how we're thinking about things and move our mindset from that of a victim to that of a visionary, which is what I talk about a lot in my book.
Great, great. And that's very important. So another question I have, and we saw the video, you skiing down the slope, and I know you love skiing. Does fear come to your mind? I mean, the fear of unknown, right? Not knowing where you might be headed. The reason I ask this question is because often, we are all professionals here, and we often set on a project or an initiative where you might not know if the outcome will be success or would it be failure, right? So there is a unknown there of the outcome, and that inherently develops fear. So how did you overcome this, right? And if there was fear in your mind, and I'm sure our audience would love or would benefit if they hear, how did you overcome this? And probably they could overcome that too and move towards success.
Yeah, there's fear, but I think the idea that we are all certain of what outcomes are going to be in life is a red herring. I'm not sure that ever really happens. Do any of us know with 100% certainty the way things are going? So for me, I think about fear and what are the acceptable fears that I can live with? What can I live with for me? And so for me, I decided that there were fears that were greater than the fear of getting hurt on the ski slope. For example, the fear of not knowing whether or not I could have this exhilarating sport and enjoy it every year for the rest of my life. I started 38 years old, a few years ago when I couldn't see. Was I more comfortable with the fear of getting hurt potentially, or was I more comfortable with the fear of not knowing? And I think that's universal. What fear are we willing to live with? I'm more comfortable with the fear of falling short, whether that be on the ski slope, whether that be in a conference room, whether that be pick anything in life. We have a very short amount of time on this planet. And at the end of our lives, if we're fortunate to live long lives, when we look back, what are we going to regret more? Not knowing or not trying? And for me, I just choose to embrace those acceptable risks. Sure, I take precautions and I manage the consequences with having a professional and the right equipment when I go skiing. So I make the consequences as acceptable and as manageable as possible. But I'm more comfortable with the fear of falling and potentially getting hurt than I am not knowing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think like any product manager, when we deal our day-to-day life, we definitely get a little bit cautious or fear of developing a new feature or taking a new idea to the market, not knowing whether it would generate the revenue as expected. And sometimes it gets a little bit challenging in that phase. So I like the approach that you mentioned, that the fear of not trying is really bigger than fear of failure. So there is always an experience that you learn as like that you can use as an advantage to yourself as you move on to your next initiative or next project. So that's great insight there, Chad. Thank you. My next question really is, so as you know, I mean, our audience here are more folks who are probably leaders or who may have teams that they lead, and sometimes these teams are maybe in their direct influence, or maybe they're not under their direct influence, right? But they still need to ensure this team come together and work together towards a success. So and this is specifically true in product management work, because most of the time we work with different stakeholders, whether it's sales team, whether it's technology team, whether it's marketing team, or whether it's customers, right? And you have to all get that buy-in and really ensure they all understand what your vision is and what you're trying to do. So when given this situation where probably there are things that may be in your control through direct influence, and there are things that may not be in your control. So how do you really look at the bright side when things are not in your control, right? And a classic example is, going blind probably was not in your control, right? In that case. So what suggestion you would have for our audience really to keep motivating, always look on the brighter side of things, even when things are not in control?
Yeah, so for all of us, the way that we think about things, our mindset, it influences the words that we choose. And the words that we choose influence our behaviors. And our behaviors influence our actions, and our actions influence our outcomes.
Right.
And as leaders, things happen in the market, things happen in the company, and if leaders don't help to set the context to help people understand how to internalize those things, then each individual will do that on their own. And they may do it in a productive way, and they may not. But as leaders, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we can take a basket of circumstances, whether it's, a product launch or going blind, or right. I mean, not so much, in the workplace, but regardless of circumstance, the way we choose to internalize something affects us. And as leaders, the way that leaders internalize something and then lead their teams accordingly affects the culture, which will absolutely affect the output of that company. It doesn't start there, but it starts with mindset, leads to words and behaviors and actions, and eventually outcomes. So that's the leader's job, in my opinion, is to make sure that they can help everyone internalize things in a way that's productive.
Right. No, that's good insight there. So, Chad, we know that you are also coming out with a book called Blind Ambition. So, tell us a little bit more about this book and what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, so the book is, it's a story about how I lost my eyesight, and I fell victim to that. But over time, I learned how to move my mindset, because it was a very difficult period. When it happened, when I went blind, I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I didn't pop out like I am right now, right? It wasn't like that. It was, for the first few years, it was very hard. And so I talk about those lessons, and what I really hope to do with the book. And the reason I wrote the book is because I learned a lot, right? Going through that, it taught me a lot about life. It taught me a lot about happiness and resilience and effort and just fulfillment, and all the ways that we can grow as a person, and what's our self-image, how do we see ourselves, and how does that affect the way that we show up every day, and how can we use it to our advantage, and how can we move our mindset from that of a victim to that of a visionary. And I really wanted to share that with people because I had to pay a pretty heavy price to get those insights, but I think everyone can benefit from those insights. And the way that I can reach the most people and help the most people is by using book. And so obviously you heard a glimpse of what I said today. It's 15 minutes. You know,
Right.
the book obviously gives me an opportunity to give a lot more detail. At the back of the book, I also have the victim to visionary resilience exercises so that you can take these concepts and apply them to your own lives so that it can get a lot more real for people and they can, you know, start to evolve the way that they're thinking about things. So for me, it's all about the mission of trying to help other people just to have the right mindset when they're facing adversity, facing change, or navigating anything that puts them out of their comfort zone.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing that, Chad. So folks, if you are interested, please visit the site. It's called Blind Ambition Book. Is that correct, Chad?
That is, yep, .com.
Okay, blindambitionbook.com. So let's switch here, given the time, to some of the audience question. And again, if you have any questions, please use the Slido link and the event code to write down your questions there, and we can see the page here, and the most liked questions, we'll probably pick up those on the top and start asking those questions. So I have one question here, Chad, for you from the audience,
Okay.
and that goes, what do you hope people take away from your story? So any response to that?
I hope that people take away from my story that they don't have to be a victim of circumstance. They can choose to tell themselves stories that take them towards their goals instead of holding them back. That although circumstances can be difficult, circumstances can be limiting, and in many cases it's very difficult, but the way that people choose to think about the circumstances are way more important than the circumstances alone. And so yes, stuff can and does happen, but you know, there is a way around it, and that is the way that you choose to think about it. And you know, having the awareness to be very intentional about that and holding oneself accountable to get towards a vision of what you can do despite your circumstances. It's something that's inspiring, painting a vision for yourself that inspires you to get up and chase that vision.
Got it. Thanks, Chad. I have a couple of questions here. The next question I have is, why do you feel it's important to share what you learn with others? Like what's the reason behind that? Probably you kind of alluded to some of that when you earlier mentioned that they don't have to go through the same adversities to learn the lessons, but probably you can add more to that.
Yeah, so it's about happiness and success, and I feel like for me, I'm actually happier now, and I'm more successful now than when I could see. And so for a lot of people, that might be surprising. I see, you know, I see people who are, you know, not as happy as they would like to be, and you know, people are facing a lot of difficulty right now with the current economic situation and the pandemic. And so there's medical issues out there, there are economic issues, there are social issues out there. And so I think people could use a dose of hope, a dose of inspiration, and some tools for resilience. And that's really what my message and the book and everything is all about. It's about hope, resilience, and dealing with change, and you know, just living happier and more successfully.
Right. No, great. Thanks, Chad. I think that would definitely benefit given the situation we are in, and most of them probably are facing. So the other question I have here is, oh, they just changed the priority. Okay. So most people, when they are in comfort zone, they get complacent. What do you have to say to them? Like if they want to really grow, is it okay to be in comfort zone?
No, you can't grow inside of your comfort zone. Life begins outside of your comfort zone. If you're not getting outside of your comfort zone, then you're not growing.
That
You know,
makes sense.
I'm very fortunate in that I've lived the majority of my life outside of my comfort zone. So I've grown comfortable with discomfort. I would encourage everybody who wants to experience growth to get comfortable with discomfort. Now, that doesn't mean that the first time they go skiing, they put on a pair of skis and go down a double black diamond. Everybody's comfort zone is different, right? But everybody needs to get a little uncomfortable every day. And eventually, as you do that, you'll notice your zone of comfort growing. And as your zone of comfort grows, you'll have to do just a little bit more to get out of that comfort zone. Continually stretching that, that's what growth is.
Correct, correct. Yeah, well, that's true. Okay, another question I have here is, and I think a bunch of questions being asked here. So
Sure.
bear with me, guys, if I miss one of those, given the time we have. So there is a question that says, how can someone learn to stop making excuses and embrace a more active mindset? Any tips or anything that you do that helps you?
Yeah, so I think for me, the thing that I kept coming back to for me personally was I could make excuses for not getting to my goal, but when I do that, the only person who suffers is me. And so I can continue to make excuses as to why I don't get there, or I can spend my energy and my effort figuring out ways around it, ways over it, ways through whatever the obstacle is. And so, you know, if excuses aren't taking you towards your goal, at some point you have to step back and go, are they really serving a purpose for me? And if it's, you know, if it's not helping you, then by definition, it's sort of hurting you. And so I think those efforts could be more effective if they're applied to figuring out ways around it, or you know, just being relentless, right? And
Right.
choosing to not accept less than what each of us define to be success. It's hard, but it is possible.
Right, right. Not great, great. Thanks for sharing that, Chad. So a couple of more questions here. Is happiness more sweet if we faced with adversity, or otherwise it's different? I don't know how you measure that, but your thoughts on that, Chad?
Well, I do believe that you could call it, I mean, it's kind of ironic coming from a blind guy saying this, but it's a metaphor, but the taller the mountain, the better the view, right? And so the amount of effort that it takes to get over something, the bigger the adversity, the more I personally enjoy it. So for me, I get a lot of my enjoyment from some of the bigger tasks because they're harder. I don't really get a lot of excitement out of doing something that's easy. I don't get a lot of excitement in doing something that's, you know, sort of, you know, average or whatever. I get inspired and motivated and fulfilled by doing something that's extraordinary.
Great. So you basically are keeping yourself challenged by doing or taking tasks that feel more challenging for you.
Completely. Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So another question I have here, Chad, for you is, so what's next for you and how do you stay motivated? That's an interesting one.
Well, next for me is just continuing to try and, you know, lead at Red Hat, right? Obviously, we're going through some growth at Red Hat, so continuing to manage cross-industry sales development there at Red Hat. As we go into, we just now finished our first year in partnership with IBM, and then obviously trying to help people as well with the book and just steer people through some difficult times, right? Right now, people need help more than ever with COVID-19 and everything else that we talked about earlier. So for me, just
Right.
being there however I can for people to try and help them manage through that. To me, that's my laser focus right now. That and just, you know, keeping things going with the
Appreciate,
business.
Chad, that. Thanks. I think that's a great thing to do, and in any way possible, if we can help other, I think that's the greatest happiness you get as well. So I think I've personally experienced it, and I'm sure most of our audience have helped one or another at any given point of time, and I'm sure they experience that joy as well. So another question I have here is, while at HBS, Harvard Business School, did you come across Robert Kagan's work on adult maturity? And if so, how do you think that relates to developing an empowered mindset in life?
I did not. I'll have to look that up though.
Okay.
Can you send me that? Can you send me that? I want to take a deeper dive on that.
Yeah, I will take a screenshot and I'll send it over to you, Chad. Okay. So I think those kind of covered most of the question I had from audience. We'll give a minute or so to see if any new questions pop up.
Okay.
Okay, audience, if you have any questions, please type it now. Otherwise, we would probably be wrapping up the Q&A session. I think that should be it, Chad, for us on Q&A. I don't see any new questions popping up here. So again, I really want to appreciate, Chad, you coming over, spending time with us and sharing all these great insights and really inspiring work, right? I think, as I mentioned, to highlight, I think I'm going to definitely keep these couple of things that help me and I think will help me going forward is, how do you ensure when you're at disadvantage, you take advantage of those, right, and convert them into your advantages? And about happiness, really, that is a decision you make every day. So when I get up, probably that's the decision I'm making, right? I'll be happy going forward. So again, thanks. And on behalf of our board members and volunteers, I really want to appreciate you, Chad, coming over. Thank you. And also thanks to our sponsor, QTS and Turner, to help us, with the sponsorship, and we can do the events because of that sponsorship support that they give us. So again, audience, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this discussion with Chad. If you do have any questions or want to learn more about Chad's book or Chad, please visit his website, chadefoster.com. You can definitely see some of his talk sessions there and some links to his book and other things as well. So appreciate you joining. I'm hoping you all have a great weekend ahead, and thank you all and have a great evening.